Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. I'm Jason Abrams, and this is the place where we lift the curtain on the world of real estate like never before. Every week, I sit down with visionaries, pirates, and mavericks. We're here to document, demonstrate, and most importantly, demystify their game-changing models and systems. What secrets propel them to the top, and how are they living their dreams? This is about passion, it's about strategy, but above all, it's about real, tangible success. So buckle up and let's dive in. This is the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. You know, I've been in this business so long, I'm lucky enough to start seeing the second generation of real estate entrepreneurs come in to some of these family lineage businesses. And this one is no different. Friends, we are going to talk to a gentleman today. Their world closes over 2,000 units a year. We're talking just under $1 billion in annual volume. And when you hear these numbers, they become somewhat abstract. And so I'm going to tell you that neither of those things matter. I said them to get you to know that this is Jedi. But here's what does matter. This person is going to talk about value, consumer value, buyer value, seller value, and he's going to do it in a way that you have not heard before. I absolutely 100% guarantee it. Friends, sit back on a journey of value with myself and a dear friend, Robert Lucido Jr. Friends, buckle up. Here we go. Robert, how are you, sir?
Fantastic. How are you, Jason?
I am excellent, and it's a rare privilege. It's an honor because there are few people on the planet that have grown a real estate team as large as your family has. So on the front end, let me say thank you for everything you are doing and will do for this industry.
Well, I appreciate that. We're not doing it alone, that's for sure.
And that's the truth, man. You got 1.5 million realtors running around, and I find that everybody's path in is different, and yours is no exception. How did you end up here with us today?
The short of it is I was playing professional baseball. It was my dream since I was 5. I played for the Rangers and the Blue Jays, and in 2018, that dream came to an end. Ultimately, I hung them up.
All right, stop the tape. Okay. Dude, I've asked a lot of people how you ended up being a real estate agent, and no one has ever said, well, I was doing that professional baseball thing. So, dude, that is so unique. Walk me through, take 2 minutes. Walk me through, what's that like? When did you realize that you were better than everyone else you were playing with and good enough to play in the number one league in the world in your sport?
Well, it was more of that I was committed to finding a way to make it work. Just to be clear, I was never the most talented player. I certainly wasn't the tallest, but I did everything I could. I was always the strongest, in the best shape, most prepared. So it was it wasn't that I knew I was good enough. It was that I was going to do everything I could to not fail. It wasn't an option. And so that's what I did for 20 years. When I tell you it was my sole focus, Jason, it's what I did every waking minute of the day, basically.
So as I understand it, having worked in the real estate side of the professional athlete world, professional baseball practices are somewhat unconstructed, meaning you kind of are there's a practice, needless to say, but a lot of it is driven by your own decisions and the amount of effort and time that you want to put in. Is that what you found?
Yeah, I mean, especially, I had a very unconventional path to being drafted, but I actually left my team senior year for differences with the coach. And I was basically forced to train by myself every morning. So I would wake up, it was Western Mass, freezing temperatures, and I would go out there and practice alone because I had to be ready for different scout days and different workouts. And so that's what I did. So every day I would throw the ball, go get it, throw again, I would hit it off a tee. Whatever I needed to do to be ready, I was committed because I wasn't willing to swallow coming up short.
Man, that's unbelievable. So what happens in 2018 that cuts that career shorter than it may have been?
So I played for the Blue Jays for 2 years. I got released. Got re-signed by Texas. There's a really interesting story right there. That has parlays into real estate. I share it frequently whenever we're training agents, because when there's a will, there's a way. Like Tony said, it's not a matter of resources, it's about resourcefulness. So if you get signed and released, only 1% of players ever get re-signed. And I wasn't a huge prospect, so the 1% was a reach for me to begin with. And I knew they weren't going to come find me because there's so many players out there and 50% turnover every year. I mean, there's big league guys that got released that would take that job. And so what I did was I called each stadium every day. And there is no public number for the front office, so I would call stadium operations or ticketing, and I would talk my way through. And one day, I called the Rangers, I called stadium operations, and I said, hey, so sorry, I just got disconnected with Kip, could you put me through? And they put me right through. And a guy picks up the phone and goes, hello? And I was like, hi, who am I speaking to? And he goes, Kip. And he cusses, he goes, you called me. And I was like, damn. So I had a 15-second elevator pitch, and I said the right thing at the right time. And he goes, I'm gonna be honest. He goes, I'm in my office 2 days a year. I've never had a player call me like this. He goes, be ready. After winter meetings, I'm bringing you to spring training.
Get out. Dude, that's the greatest baseball story ever. Bill Durham has nothing on you. You literally cold called your way into a franchise?
Exactly. I mean, that's all I did, and I did it every day because, everyone's always like, go get new leads. There's only 30 teams, so I had the same 30 teams to call every day, and I got a hold of them, of several of them, and one of them was fortunate enough to take a flyer on me and give me an opportunity.
Dude, that's incredible. So then you end up in Texas. You're playing. What happens in 18?
Yeah. So I went to spring training. I gave it everything I had. We went into camp at 219 players, and they had to cut down to 125 before the season even started. So it's a high turnover position, and I was going in, I was considered an older player, so I would have to go to at least AA or AAA. And I went in, I actually got in one game, but ultimately they called me in and said, hey, at your age, we don't have a spot for you right on the AA team.
So I got to think, this is a dream since you're 5. You literally willed it to happen. Now you look up, you're still a young man by conventional standards, although not by professional athletic standards. How does that turn into this storied real estate career?
So out of college, I was supposed to go in the Marine Corps, and I put that on hold when I got drafted. So when I saw the writing on the wall, in other words, I could have kept playing independent ball, making no money, just chasing a dream I knew wouldn't happen again. So I decided to move back up to Maryland to join the Marine Corps. And I had sprained my ankle when I was playing, and for 2 years they wouldn't take me. And so in the meantime, I started filling in. And so Bob and Tracy had to let a few people go, and they needed someone to schedule photos. So I started at the very bottom, the lowest paid person in the company, and just started scheduling photos for our listings. And that's how it started.
And if you don't know the lore here, when he says Bob and Tracy, he's talking about the great Bob Lucido, who has shoulders that much of the industry stands on today. That's awesome, dude. So you get in. The kind of success that y'all have is so rare. And I know you know the numbers, but it's so rare. What's that thing that y'all do that's so much better than everybody else, or at the very least so scalable that it's allowed you to go to all these different states and have all this success?
Yeah, initially it was largely the will of Bob. I remember, so he had a very successful new builder and marketing land sales company, second largest in the country. And he had to shut that down after 20 years leading into 08, 09. And I remember when he decided to start Bob Lucido team, first day, it was mid-August, he was out there in a suit door knocking to get his first listing in the midst of the Great Recession. And so he did $32 million his first year, and then within the next few years grew to $250, and then within the next couple of years grew to $800. And so that was just in the state of Maryland too. So the sheer strength of his leadership and commitment, and similarly, I think it's where I got it, his unwillingness to fail is what drove us there. And then we basically took that success and dominoed it into different services and systems that have great leverage that we can provide to other teams and provide value to them regardless of where they're located.
I love that, man. And a lot of that revolves around the way that you present the value that your company has institutionalized. Walk me through, teach us. I want you to imagine that you have literally hundreds of thousands of real estate agents right now. They're driving in their car. Put something into their head that makes them richer.
All right. Well, one of the things I like to pride myself on is to challenge status quo and to question conventional wisdom. Because in this industry, we've been all doing the same thing in the same way for a long time. And so it's very easy, through no fault of our own, to just take it as with a grain of salt of this is how it is.
Now, far be it from me to ever disagree with one of our guests, but I want to dot the I, because what Robert said is, Jason, this industry has been doing the same thing the same way for a really long time. I want to jump in and say it may appear that way at times, but to say that as a blanket statement, I want to make sure that you know what he's saying. What he's saying is that although we've changed within the industry as times have, we haven't done a great job explaining the changes to the consumer. So the consumer wakes up on a daily basis and thinks that real estate agents have been doing the same thing since 1891 when the industry was founded. You and I both know that's not the case. But you know what is the case? That the reason people move hasn't changed over that entire period of time. People move when they have life events. They get a job, they lose a job, they get rich, they get poor, they have a kid, they become an empty nester, they find love, they get divorced. These are the reasons that people move. So here's what you could say. You could say that the reason people move has been the same reason, the same way for a really long time. And what they perceive real estate agents to do to service that need is the same thing over time. And here's the opportunity. He's about to go deep into describing the way that you demonstrate value. Because if your value has changed, but nobody knows or knows how to compare it to anything, how could they possibly agree that it changed for the better?
And I think the biggest opportunity right now is actually at the high end of the market, because the middle is messy and there's plenty of discount competition, which is a price war. It's a race to the bottom. And so you have this nice spot at the top end of the market for premium service and premium compensation. But here's the rub. You got to be able to differentiate yourself. And so one of the things that we do is we have different sales systems, full-fledged systems, from marketing to presentation tactics to the forms, the addendums, the whole shebang, including the training program. And that's one of the things that's in most demand right now, because we can capture, I won't use specific numbers, but we capture very high commissions on both ends of the market because we're making a value-based decision as opposed to a price-driven decision.
Well, what you said is, I think, spot on, which is real estate agents present their value, but then the consumer gets to decide how valuable it is to them. And in that moment, they decide how much they're willing to spend on it. Mm-hmm. Talk me through how you think about it.
All right, so let's hone in on the buy side right now because there's a lot of focus there. From my vantage point, one of the biggest problems is that fundamentally 99% of agents are making the same presentation of value. They're offering the same core 4 services, 3 of which have largely been commoditized, which means they're widely available and interchangeable. And so it's no value. There's no lack of understanding around why that is. If we're easily replaceable, it's a race to the bottom. And so if that's the prevailing status quo, what can we do to differentiate ourselves and provide more value that bar none sets us apart? And so that's what we have focused on doing. Because if all products are equal, the cheapest one is the most valuable by default. So
wow. That's a big idea, man. If they're all the same, the cheapest one becomes the most valuable.
Exactly. And so unless you have the lowest cost, you can't win the price war. And if you think about it, for the last 100 years, the best teams, the best agents have been essentially injecting more and more value without a commensurate rise in their compensation. So the best teams have the thinnest margins because they're providing the most for the same amount, more or less. And so if you fully dispel notions around how things should work, if you think about any industry out there, your value should dictate what you're compensated. And that's the end of discussion. So So yeah.
I love that. So, okay, so now I'm sitting out there in podcast land, and I'm wondering, okay, walk me through this. Walk me through the value that y'all provide and how I should think about it.
Okay. Well, the first thing is, and I won't delve in too much, which is you have to be fully in charge of dictating what you earn, what your value is, and what your costs are. You don't allow anyone else to dictate your worth. And that's the biggest cardinal sin anyone can make in a sales-oriented industry. So the first thing is take back control of what your worth is. That's the first step. Until you do that, you're up a creek.
I love that. Gary always said, by the way, if you're new to the show, when we talk about Gary, we're talking about Gary Keller. Him, Jay Papasan, and Dave Jenks wrote a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which is the namesake of this show. And Gary always says that everything starts with mindset, meaning I take thought and then I take action. Robert, the fact that you started there doesn't surprise me. Taking back your power and your value, that's step one.
100%. If you don't do that, everything else is meaningless because you could give them a free $1 million, but if you're going to let someone else decide what that's worth, that's a real problem, especially if someone's negotiating against you. So then if we continue on that vein of mindset, so then we're thinking about how do we differentiate ourselves. So to give you an example, the biggest commodity in the world arguably is water. And if you put water in a water fountain, it's free. If you put it in a bottle, it's $2. If you put bubbles in it, it's $3.50. And if you put it in a mini fridge in Las Vegas before family reunion, it's $15.
Yes.
And so something that is the biggest commodity in the world can still effectively be differentiated. And so there's absolutely no excuse why you as an agent can't go out there and effectively differentiate yourself and dictate what you're worth. And so one of the questions we ask is whenever we do this training is we ask the audience, if you were going to start a hot dog stand and a genie was going to give you one wish for any competitive advantage, just one, and whatever you wish for is going to set you far above everyone else, what would it be? And we always get different answers, but really the one key answer would be a starving crowd. Because you can have a terrible hot dog, you could have a coli, you could have bad marketing, you could be a terrible salesperson, but if you're at the football game and it's halftime, you're going to sell out. So we ask people, what are your buyers starving for? Because that's where it has to start. And the number one thing buyers are starving for, particularly over the last 3 years, is housing affordability. And so we sit down and we ask the room, what have you done over the last 3 years to help your buyers, help them better afford houses? And to us, that's the biggest opportunity, because if they can't get the mortgage to buy the house, what's the probability of them actually buying the house and us getting paid? Virtually zero. And so in the past, I think speaking of our agents, have been too passive in saying, hey, well, let me connect you with a lender and let's see what they can do. In reality, that's the whole shebang. Because until that happens, until we get them pre-approved, until we know what they can afford and get them mobilized off the sidelines, we're really not in a position for us to deliver service and make money.
I love that. What are some of the things that you do there to make sure that happens?
Yeah, so with us, we have a mortgage partner that we operate. So first of all, there's great collaboration and communication around getting these buyers pre-approved. We also structured it so we have very good rates. We're typically 0.5 to 3/4 point better than average market. And on top of that, we have different services and terms that our mortgage partner will offer, what we call VIP buyer clients. So to us, look, us as an agent play a very important role, but a relatively small role financially in the overall transaction. You can be the best agent in the world, the most expensive agent in the world, and you'll never be the most expensive part of the transaction. The biggest part of the transaction is the mortgage. And if you can help that client save a lot of money on the mortgage, would they be willing to pay you a little bit more on your commission? 100%. And so that's one of the biggest things that we've unlocked over the last year is better helping our clients for higher compensation.
When he talks about this idea of helping our clients more for more compensation, there's someone out there that is having this epiphany and they're saying, yeah, more for more? And I want to double click on that because you do realize that the vast majority of business owners right now are waking up and they're saying more for less. They call it shrinkflation. Things are getting smaller, you're getting less, but somehow we want to charge more for it. What Robert is saying, which is so refreshing, is I want to give more to get more. And that speaks directly to the law of value, which is the value you give determines the value that you get. That's such a big idea. It's so important to remember that our business could really be broken into these two competing sides, functional and fiduciary. And the truth of the matter is that the functionality is important. A functionary does tasks, and there are functionary tasks that get done in any real estate transaction. But any functionary task can be done in a fiduciary way. So let's just talk about the difference for a second. When we do something as a functionary, we do it usually with low information. We provide data. When we do that same thing in a fiduciary way, we're interpreting the data and then giving advice. Remember, the functionary does the task. The fiduciary does the task and acts like they're responsible and believes they are for the outcome. And of course, the outcome was defined by the customer before we ever got into business with each other. You see, functionaries are at risk of doing the tasks and earning less money doing them. These are the things that can be automated. Fiduciaries, on the other hand, who provide greater value, they're paid in direct relation to that value. They never have to worry. I'll give you a simple example of this. I want you to imagine you go into somebody's house and you say, part of my listing program is to take photographs of your home. And they say, fantastic. Stop. Friends, just know this. They immediately think of you setting up a photographer as a functionary task. Jason's going to call a photographer, tell him what time to come. Boom, functionary. They assign little to no value to that. But I want to tell you a story. I once got involved in helping somebody sell a house on the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, California. This was an $18 million house. And as I was sitting in it, I was thinking, you know what? I'm going to have to shoot this house from a photography standpoint multiple times. I'm never going to get the ocean to look with the right light and get the front of the house, so I got to shoot the house twice. Number two, I got the Pacific Coast Highway between the house and the ocean, so I'm not going to use a drone because I don't want to highlight the road. And number three, if we're going to shoot the ocean for this house, why don't we shoot it in such a way that accentuates the rooms that have the view as opposed to the ocean themselves, because everyone has seen the ocean before. Now, do you see the difference between functionary and fiduciary? Here's the problem. If I wouldn't explained any of that to the end user, my client, they would have had no idea the kind of fiduciary experience that simply ordering a photograph can be. And that's what Robert is talking about. I want you to think about right now every functionary task in your business and ask the question, how do I make that functionary task into a fiduciary experience? Go.
To us, I challenge our people. Great salespeople overcome objections. Great entrepreneurs solve them. You know, our friend Tim solved an unbelievable, he didn't say, okay, here's an objection, let me solve it. He created an idea that turned into HomeWord, which is a $1 billion valuation in 3 years. That's the difference. Great entrepreneurs solve those objections as opposed to just being, having the gift of gab. So housing affordability, in 2000, to afford the median priced home, you needed a qualifying income of $49,000. Last year, that rose to over $105,000. So roughly, buyers have lost half their purchasing power in 3 years. And so that's the single greatest issue in the market in regards to us serving buyer clients. And if you can effectively help buyers solve that, you can obviously dictate your compensation in line with that.
I love that. Okay, so I got number one, I got number two. Is there a number three, or am I overcomplicating it at this point?
No, there's actually 5 ways we differentiate ourselves. So number one is offering solutions to core problems, which is housing affordability. Number 2 would be pricing to position effectively. And so we do a whole exercise where we take people through. There's consultants out there that get paid a fortune just to help companies price their goods and services effectively. There's a great one named Madhavan that's brilliant, and he has great best-selling books and podcasts. And so one of the greatest issues that we teach our agents to is price should not be left to the end, because price is inherently a part of how people perceive value. And so we introduce price much earlier on because we believe it's a core factor to that value equation. And so there's a few examples of how we illustrate this. And the first would be a study that looks at, the survey people are given 3 bottles of wine. And they're told that it's low priced, medium priced, and high priced. Except it's the same cheap bottle of wine in all 3. And the survey people, of course, rank it in order of price for how good it tastes. There's another study that gives people 5 bottles, and instead of low, medium, high, it tells them exact price points. And it takes it a step further because when they're sampling it, they're actually in a big MRI, and they're looking at their brain activity. And what they find is that 2 areas of the brain light up, and those areas of the brain are involved in evaluating expectations and seeking rewards. In short, when we see a higher price, our brain links it to greater perception of value and expectation of reward.
Wow, man, that makes so much sense to me, but no one ever says it.
Well, let me put it this way. If you go into a listing appointment and you say you're worth X, and there's a competitor X minus, let's say, a half donut, there's not enough gap there. So if you're really worth more, why are you charging just a little bit more? And so if you really want to differentiate yourself, pricing inherently is a part of how you differentiate yourself. If you think about great brands like Chanel, like Chanel's price points are not connected to the cost of other leather. Chanel's price point is, its value as a brand is inherently connected to the price point, which is exclusive. In fact, in 2021, they instituted a policy that restricted the number of bags that someone could purchase to 2 per year. And even more so, what I found brilliant is they only send 2 SKUs of each purse item to a store, so that when you walk in, every item is either sold out, second to last, or last item. What does that do to the buyer's psyche if everything is almost sold out?
Dude, that is so good. That's that old, the equation for cool is scarcity plus exclusivity. That is such a neat idea. I never thought the parallel to bring that into a pricing strategy, but it makes sense. It's why someone will go pay $4 for a wallet at Target and pay $700 for it at Louis Vuitton.
Exactly. So by taking back control of our compensation, we gain a crucial element, which is another element we can differentiate ourselves on. We're going to deliver so much value that the price point is going to be another thing to set us apart.
I love it. What's next?
Next is creating value across all dimensions. Now, you guys have a great course on value squares, so maybe I'll just throw in one little snippet, which we find is very important because there's lots of talk about creating value, and the next logical question becomes, well, how do you create value? And so what I want to do is put yourself in the mindset of your consumer, of your buyer or your seller. And there's essentially 4 dimensions to what factors into the value equation in our estimation. And the first is dream outcome. Dream outcome is how long will it take to achieve it. Number 2 is perceived likelihood of success. Because, someone may hire you, Jason, and we can deliver the same dream outcome, but they have a 90% chance of succeeding with you and a 30% chance with me. That affects the whole paradigm of value. And so at the top of the equation, you have dream outcome and perceived likelihood of success. At the bottom, you have time delay and effort and sacrifice. And what this means is, the best companies in the world focus on the bottom. Because if the bottom is infinite, if the bottom is 0, your value is infinite. Which means if someone buys an item or a good or service from you, it requires no time and no effort to get exactly what they want. Yeah. And that's the difference between Sears Catalog and Amazon. Sears Catalog dominated the top. Amazon simply said, hey, you can do it from the comfort of your home by clicking one button and you can get it today or tomorrow, as opposed to waiting 2 or 3 weeks. So to us, another way we differentiate ourselves is very tactically on how we create value, which is by delivering the dream outcome, increasing the likelihood of success, reducing the time it takes to achieve it, and reducing the amount of effort required from our client.
I love that. The idea that there's 2 things that we're going to enhance and then 2 things that we're going to minimize. And ultimately, you're going to win on both sides of the equation. I think that's brilliant.
Exactly. a holistic approach to creating value. And it really helps our agents conceptualize it in that paradigm so that they understand, hey, if I do this, it's going to help increase the perceived likelihood of success or reduce the amount of work that they have to put into the transaction.
Brilliant. Okay, what's next?
Number 4 is stacking value throughout the offer presentation. So if agents have fundamentally been making the same value prop presentation and pricing it the same, in ballpark the same way, another way that we differentiate ourselves is actually how we make our listing presentation or buyer consultation. And I'll leave with this one simple thing. It's just a single offer is less valuable than the same offer broken into its component parts and stacked as bonuses. What this really means is, but wait, there's more. It's like every infomercial in the world. So instead of saying, I'll give you all of this for this price, we're going to say, hey, we're going to give you our core offer for this price. And then we're going to layer on a ton of stuff that's even more valuable than the initial presentation. And so at that point, the value paradigm is completely changed because we've told them what it's worth. They already calibrated if they think it's too high or too low or on point. And regardless, we still have more to give them. So if they think it's too expensive, well, wait, there's more. But wait, there's more. But wait, there's more. And that's one of our secrets.
Oh, man. I'm sitting here because I bought the ShamW, and I remember them saying, but I was the first one for the ShamW. I was first in line. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to replace every Sham I have. That makes so much sense. Why do you think? Well, you know what? Do number 5, and then I'm going to ask you the overarching question because I don't want to derail you. What's number 5?
Number 5 is simply solving the biggest objection, which is risk, taking risk off the table for the client. And so the one point I'll share on this is basically every agent out there is selling the plane trip when they should be selling the vacation. If you look at any commercial for any airliner, they're going to show you a luxurious video of someone sitting in first class for like a 15-minute flight to Europe. And then they're going to show the vacation of everything they're experiencing in the Amalfi Coast or in Paris or the like. And so if an airliner is selling the vacation in order to sell their service, why are we still selling, hey, I'll do A, B, and C for you, as opposed to, hey, Jason, I'm going to deliver A, B, and C for you, and here's how I'm going to put my money behind it.
You seem to have made a study of all of the other businesses of which I frequent. You've named luxury brands. You've kind of explained technology. You've done airlines. Yet I don't see all the parallels until you mention them that connect to our industry. Why do you think you've naturally looked outside of real estate to bring ideas in as opposed to the most folks out there who kind of look within?
Yeah, I think
is that just how you're wired?
Partially. I think it's also a blessing in disguise that I had a separate career, completely separate from real estate. So I haven't been induced into the conventional wisdom that, like Bob, who's excelled for 40 years, he's been in that environment for 40 years. So I'm able to come with a fresh set of eyes and look at it. I'm also an avid reader, so I read tons of other things that are going on in industry. So I'm looking for parallels of things that we can do in our industry better or at even a closer, smaller level.
Okay, so if I'm out there right now and I've just heard you take me through these things, I mean, I've changed the way that I've thought. I'm thinking now about housing affordability. I'm thinking around my pricing and my positioning. I'm thinking around maximizing the things they want while minimizing the things they don't, like time. I'm thinking about stacking my value. What advice would you give me on how to go make these things live and breathe in my business? Because what I don't want to do is give everybody a bunch of sound bites and then they're driving in their car with no idea what to go do next.
So the first thing is someone that's listening to this is going to see the most value if they have some stones, if they're going to be bold. Because if we're actually going to say you should be charging more, you first and foremost have to believe you're worth it. So we have a pricing credo, which is basically you should charge as much as you can for your services, A. B, you should never charge more than they're worth. And C, they should be a lot more than they cost. So that's our wisdom and how we price our goods and services. But if you're walking in there thinking you're not worth more than what you're putting on the table, they're going to sniff that rate out. So first and foremost is you got to really believe that what you have is valuable, and then you got to be prepared to present it. And when you get an objection, you can't just cave and say, oh, I'll just offer you this. No, you stand by your value, and that's what you're negotiating. I think the wisest thing that you and Gary said on, I guess it was the town hall last week, was listing side has been a skills-based market. The buyer side has been a service-based side. Now it's both skill. And so if you're a skilled agent, if you're committed, if you're hungry, I think this is a massive opportunity for those agents. Because the agents that have, in my opinion, I'll leave that off the table, but I think the agents that are most skilled have a great opportunity to go in there and command what they're worth.
Dude, I think you're genius. Like I'm literally blown away. I love the way that you think about the industry. I love the way that you think about pricing. And I really love the simplicity and how you think about value. And the thing that I love the most is how you said don't charge more than you're worth. Your values, because it would be easy to listen and say, oh, this guy's he's just a capitalist. He was willing to overcharge. You're not. You literally want to raise your value to the point where you charge so much that you feel great about life, you get the margins you want, and the consumer gets an amazing product.
Yeah, I don't believe pricing it should be at all connected to the cost of producing that good or service. Like, I'll give you a couple examples. Jason, do you know how much your monthly phone bill is?
Yeah, $237 a month.
And do you know how much it costs the phone carrier to support your line?
It's got to be pennies.
Yeah, 2 cents. So it's totally disconnected. It's connected to the value that you perceive because you can pick up the phone and call anyone in the world. I mean, it's amazing technology.
By the way, for those of you out there that are judging, I got a bunch of phones on my plan. It's all unlimited. I don't, so you put your judgment away. But so you're right, man. It has nothing to do with the cost on their end. It's the value on mine.
No, I'll put it this way. Porsche. Porsche was a sports car manufacturer that had this audacious idea that we're going to build an SUV. And everyone was like, you're crazy. Like, you build sports cars. Stay in your lane, bro. Like, pardon the pun. And they basically commissioned a whole extensive study, not starting with the car, but working to establish the price point. And so they figured out what people were willing to pay for different features. And then off of that price point, they built the car for that price point. And it's the most successful car they have. And so the question isn't, is 4 donuts or 5 donuts too much? The question should be, if you want to charge that, how are you going to be worth it?
That's it. It's not going to get any better than that because you literally have just defined the challenge and the opportunity for the industry over the next decade. That's what I believe. Friends, I'm not even going to try to encapsulate it any better. That was pure genius. We want you, sir, to enter the lightning round with us. So the lightning round goes like this. We're going to ask you a series of questions. We want the first thing that comes into your head. Will you play?
Yes, sir.
What is your favorite color?
Blue.
What is your favorite food?
Sushi.
Stop the lightning round. It's so good, but you know the thing about it, since you brought it up?
How's this lightning round?
Well, because sometimes with the food I get stuck, but it's sneakily caloric. Like I can go and feel like I'm crushing a diet with sushi and then look up and I'm 1,500 calories into an all-you-can-eat Ganzu party.
Well, especially how much I eat. I mean, the fatty content obviously increases calories, but I use it as a cheat meal, so I'm off the hook.
So good. What is your favorite sound?
I'm going to say the crack of the bat when it hits a home run.
Yeah, I can only imagine. For someone who can't swing a bat, I can only imagine, literally. Is there a book, and certainly doesn't have to be a new one, and I know that there's so many, if there's one, though, that you think our people, knowing real estate agents, should have on their bookshelf, which one is it? And again, you don't have to say the MREA, but which book?
Is it only one, or can I give you 3?
Go ahead.
All right. First is going to be 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson. Probably my favorite book I've ever read. I actually read it 3 times. I read it right when I retired from ball, so obviously a tenuous time. That book has blown me away. I get more value from it each time I read it. Tony Robbins, Money Master the Game is very good. Never Split the Difference. It's actually required reading for our agents. So those are a few. Those are 3 at my top. I mean,
yeah, and if you haven't read Never Split the, they're all great, by the way. I've read them all. Really, the neat thing about Never Split the Difference is that gentleman's background. I mean, he literally was a CIA negotiator. Yeah, I mean, that's a great one.
And then I think the last one would be Unreasonable Hospitality. If you've read that one,
Making the rounds.
Brilliant.
Great book. Great book. Is there a podcast other than this one that you like to have a voice in your head? Is there one that you tell our people to listen to?
I have listened to more so in the past. I would leave that because I've been so busy that I've actually been slacking on podcasts.
Where is the best place to go on vacation?
Well, I live in Miami, so I don't even really know if I need to go on vacation.
But when you do, where's the spot?
I had amazing trips to South Africa. I played in Japan. Those two countries are amazing. South Africa, I swam with great whites, played with cheetahs. Pretty unbelievable.
And unreasonable, if you ask me. My friend, that was the lightning round. This has been an education in all things value. There it is. It's another one, and it's in the books. And I want you to know, there were so many notes with Robert, and again, you don't have to take the notes. I take the notes. Go to MREAnotes.com. MREAnotes.com. Enter your name, enter your email. Our notes come out on Thursday, and you know what the notes are going to say at the top of this thing? I'm going to talk about this idea of dream outcome as what they want versus effort and sacrifice, which is what they have to give. When he explained the dichotomy of those two things in the mind of the actual client, my head exploded all over my mahogany desk. I thought that was genius. I also thought it was genius when he said, listen, water out of the water fountain, it's free. Water in a bottle is $2. Water with bubbles in it is $3, but water in a mini fridge in Las Vegas the day that Keller Williams and Jason Abrams and Gary Keller shows up there is $16. Now, tell me the difference in the water. And as I'm thinking about it, friends, here's what I'm taken with. Number one, he has an amazing ability to look outside our industry and then ask questions about inside our industry. And all of us should be doing that. I want you to think about which products do you absolutely love. Now I want you to think about why do you love those products? And then I want you to be open to the idea that the way that they were marketed, the way that they were branded, the way that they function, these are the things that make you love the product. Now ask the question, how do I start bringing that into my real estate business? That's what I think he does all day long. He talked about it in the airline business. He talked about it in the water business. He talked about it in the technology business. He looks outside to bring inside, when I think the majority of the people look inside to keep it inside. That, I think, is the genius of Robert Lucido, and I think that's probably what he goes down for on this show. I'm going to leave you with this idea. Right now, there's a bigger opportunity than almost ever before to go have conversations with every single person that we meet about the value of a real estate agent. The reason the opportunity exists is absolutely immaterial to the fact that the opportunity is there. But let me tell you, you have the client's attention right now. And attention is a terrible thing to waste. You do realize that you could stand outside of somebody's window in the front yard serenading them nonstop. If the window isn't opened, they are not going to hear you. And then in some moment, they open the window and this beautiful majesty happens between two people and there's connection that's made. Every single one of their windows is open. The only question outstanding, will you be there to serenade them? Friends, go forth and do likewise. There it is. That wraps another episode. Friends, I don't know what you're taking out of this. I really don't. I'll tell you what I want you to be taking out of it, which is these are the people that are having tremendously big lives. And the reason it's happening is because they're setting up the models and systems to do just that. Gary Keller told me that leadership is teaching people how to think so that they do the things they need to do when they need to do them, so that ultimately they get the things they want when they want to have them. And that's what I want for you. You're all leaders, but it begins with leading ourselves. If you're enjoying this podcast, I want you to click the subscribe button anywhere that you get your podcasts. We want to be the voice in your head every single week, and every week we're dropping new content. We also send out a newsletter at the conclusion of every show to make sure that you get the highest points in the models and systems that were discussed. So if you want to sign up, I need your name and your email address. Head over to the millionaireagentpodcast.com. millionaireagentpodcast.com. Enter your name and your email address, and every week that newsletter will be in your box. Friends, You just went on a journey. I hope that what happens between now and the next time we meet is absolutely wonderful for you. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not KWRI and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information.